it is okay. The thingies are doing the up and downy thingy, and then okay. So the mic is on, the camera's on. George is running around like a chicken with its head cut off, and yeah. I think we're doing this. So, hey, everybody, my name is Derek, and I am the owner, creator, and a head silicone slinger at Amavidi, where we make silicone toys for adults. Now, let's see. This week we have Ben and Pierre-Luc from Freely Toys, and they'll be joining me here in just a moment. This is going to be the first time I've ever had two people on at the same time.
No, it's not.
So this will be a interesting little conversation. I have no idea how it's going to go because, well, actually it should go fairly easily because they're Canadian and they're very polite. I mean, that was the thing, is they were so polite that it was very hard to get, like, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But we've got Ben and Pierre-Luc from Freely Toys. They'll be joining me here in just a minute. Let's see. Updates. Just got done moving the studio this week. Was it this week or was it last week? I don't know. I've barely slept in the last 2 weeks. So I have no idea. I barely know that today is Sunday, and well, actually, the only reason I know it's Sunday is because I'm doing this. But we got the studio moved, and we are almost back in production. But we should be back in production next week, and yeah. So that has been an experience and a half. But that's going well-ish. Live streams are going well. We've got guests booked out through the end of June. So everything there is going well. So we've got another month of guests booked out. And George is doing the thing in the chat. She's all ahead of me in everything. She's got the Patreon all teed up and ready for me. We do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Amavidi, AMAVIDI. And yeah, if you want to, you can support us there. And, websites, amavidi.com, imakesextoys.com, and patreon.com/Amavidi. We also have the Twitters, which if you are here, you probably know about the Twitters. And if you're here, you probably better know about the YouTube because you're here. Anyway, all right, let's get the folks from Freely on and see if we can rile up some Canadians. All right. If I hit the right button, if I do that, we should have... Hey, Ben!
Hey, how's it going?
Pierre-Luc, how you doing?
How's it going?
Good. Now then, just so everybody knows and we can be clear, Ben, raise your hand and wave.
Hello.
Yay! And then Pierre-Luc. All right. So now then, everybody knows who everybody is. You guys doing all right tonight?
Doing fantastic. It's, a bit of a sweltering day, especially for Canada. It's got all the windows open, but, it's been a good one. Nice Sunday.
Sweltering. It's barely May. Well, I'd say it's barely the end of May. How can it be that warm?
It was like 26 Celsius today, so that's pretty warm for here. It's been like 10 degrees
that's
Celsius.
Like 72, 74 degrees in freedom units?
There's no way to know. I have zero clue. 26 Celsius is, like 78. Okay. 78 Fahrenheit.
That's right, it is, yeah. I should know that because, well, silicone temperatures. Room temperature is 23, and yeah. And somewhere around 26, 27 degrees is when things start going wrong. So, but yeah, it was okay. So that's a little bit warm, I guess, for you guys. I think today it was 82, 85 degrees, something like that around here. So
that's awful.
That's nothing. That's nothing. It'll get up over 100, 110 here in a couple months.
What's that in the rest of the world unit?
43.
Holy what?
Yeah, it'll be. Yeah, it's sweating death is all I know.
Yeah.
But no. All right. So you had a sweltering day. But no,
Yeah.
you guys are not together because you are in different places, right?
Hmm. For
So
now,
now,
we'll be
okay,
reunited soon.
all right. Now you are part of a team. Freely is actually not just you two. Is that right? Okay,
Exactly.
so tell everybody, what is Freely? How is this team made up? And give us the thumbnail sketch of what Freely is.
Sure thing. So you're right. Freely is not just us two. Freely is four folks who kicked it off about, oh geez, 2.5 years ago, I'd say. We all met through university. So we're all engineering graduates from McGill University out in Montreal. All of us come from, different backgrounds, different places, but we met through the engineering program, and we all also took a minor in entrepreneurship, which is really what helped kickstart all of Freely. And for the longest time, we were kicking around different ideas of how we could start something cool. We knew that we wanted to do something. And after one particularly annoying exam on Zoom, because it was the middle of COVID, we're, hanging out, sharing some beers over a Zoom call, just chatting about what happened. And we start throwing around ideas. And one idea that came about, because as I said, middle of COVID, the height of when people are exploring sexual wellness and understanding how best to pursue their sexual well-being, we're like, okay, well, obviously there's a lot of people who are looking for sex toys, and we're understanding that all of our communities had started talking about this, so this was like a really hot topic in all of our circles, and we're like, we could probably do something cool and try to bring a new perspective to this, with our engineering backgrounds. And so we kicked out the idea of, okay, what if we could make a software that lets people design their own toys? And then our initial idea was, yeah, and then we'll just 3D print them, right? Like we know how to 3D print. Like I'd done research in 3D printing. I'm like, easy peasy, just 3D print a toy, knowing absolutely nothing about, the body safety aspects, but knowing obviously that's something we'd have to look out for. And we're like, okay, cool, let's test it out. And so we dive into that hole and realize, oh crap, that's not going to be as easy as we thought. And so the four of us, we started working on prototypes, and 3-4 days later, we had our first prototype, which, I don't think we ever want to see the light of day. But, iteratively, bit by bit, we reached out to our professors at the university. We had some fantastic support from the staff and from the research institutions, the labs there. And we worked on a new process that helped us really cut down the cost of making brand new toys with our software from scratch. And now here we are today. That's, how hard could it be, right? Hard, it turns out. Now our toys, our process has been vetted, tested by a third-party lab, and we launched about a year and a bit ago now.
Okay, awesome. Now, all of you have engineering backgrounds. So, I mean, do you each have specialties, or no? You said you guys all have mechanical engineering backgrounds, right? I'm going back to our conversation the other night. What was it? 2 mechanical and what?
3 of us are mechanical, and the other is in computer engineering. And along the way, we've picked up another 5th member who's in software engineering. So it's a very crowded team for a company in the sphere. Let's say. I don't think we've met much bigger teams, but we have a lot of fun together.
Yeah. Okay, but all right. So you got 5 engineers in a room, and you guys decide to make sex toys. And what does that look like? What do 5 engineers in a room come up with?
I can tell you, before coming up with stuff, we were like, okay, well, let's research this for like a couple of months, and then let's go around and tell people we're going to start a dildo company. That's the first reaction you get from 4 engineers in a room starting a dildo company.
Yeah.
I don't know, Ben, you got any other ideas for that?
Yeah, for sure. We have this idea, but we wanted to make sure that it would actually help people. Like, sort of the foundation. Okay. One of the main mindsets that you pick up through an engineering background is, how to solve problems, but first, how to identify the problem. And so we want to make sure, first and foremost, that there is a problem here that we could really help people with. And so we were fiddling around, and like I had a printer that I'd already owned that I was doing some tests with, and that was kind of a side project while we built out a survey that we really just wanted to understand people's current thoughts and relationship with sex toys and like the sex toy space and the offerings on the market. We'd done research, so we knew about the big hitters and sort of the different players within the space. Like retailers, sort of like Big Cherry, Adam and Eve. You got the more like high-end boutique style ones like Lilo, and then you have this whole like Etsy maker space of like very artisanally made toys. And we're like,
Right.
okay, so we mapped these out. We asked people a ton of questions about, do you buy toys? Why or why not? How many do you own? Do you like them? Don't you? What are your favorite parts, your least favorite parts? And we noticed this really common trend, especially among people who own more toys. And that trend was, the more toys you own, the less likely you are to be satisfied with the toys that are on the market, right?
Yeah.
Especially for collectors, they hit like a certain critical mass where they're like, okay, I feel like I've seen what's out there. I want to try something weird, something I haven't seen before, and like,
Yeah.
I need something new to scratch that itch, so to speak, right? And so we're like, okay, this could be a good niche for us to try to fill with our process. By this point, where we got like over 650 answers, I want to say, on that survey, and it was I wouldn't say the most consequential sample size. It wasn't the best, but we hit a point where we're like, okay, we're noticing a trend. We have developed like a basic enough process where we're confident, especially with more testing and more iterations, that we'll be able to make toys at a reduced cost. And we're working on our software, so let's go and let's jump in and make this happen.
This is a thought that actually passed through my mind when I got started. I just didn't have the technical know-how to implement it. One of the concerns I had when I considered it was, do people actually know what they want? Like you said, they want something different, but do they know what that is?
Yeah, that's a big question that's always been with us, and that's the one that kind of at the back of Freely's mind is like, okay, well, there's people need to know what they want, they need to know what's good for them, and they need to get over sort of this choice paralysis of like making lots of choices. And we found that like our customers today, most of them are people who have tons of experience, so they do actually know what they want. They do educate themselves. They know where to get resources to figure out how to build the best sex toy for them. But we're trying to actually put a bit more education. We have our blog, and we're trying to change our software such that it's going to, in the future, help people who know a bit less about their own preferences or about sexual wellness or about the different elements of a good sex toy, such that they can make their own toy. But also, a lot of our customers kind of just like experimenting. So it's not like if there's like one perfect toy that they're looking for. They're kind of just like, oh, I just want to try something new. I want to have something unique in my hand that really feels like it's mine.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up, Derek, because right at the beginning, our idea was, these very experienced people will know exactly what they want, and our sort of branding and the way that we messaged about what we were making was like, get that perfect toy for you,
Yeah.
And the more that we spoke to people and understood and really dove into this space and spoke to creators like you, for example, who like, have a much stronger footing than we have just from, rote experience, we learned, okay, that doesn't exist. Like, that one thing as a perfect toy doesn't exist. A toy that's perfect for you now, you're going to grow out of, and maybe you'll grow back into, and like, that doesn't exist. That's why people have collections, to have like this arsenal of different tools. And so as we're learning, it's more and more so us changing that perspective that that I guess you can call false assumption into something that's more like, okay, instead of make the perfect toy for you, here's some knowledge, and here's how you can sort of understand what kind of toys might work for you, and then tweaking them from there based on personal experience. And like, I write on our blog what I call the dev blog, which is essentially documenting all of our trial and errors. And like at Freely, a really, really big thing that we prioritize it, and the thing that we put a lot of importance on is failing. We love failing because like when you fail, yeah, it feels bad in the short term, but it means that you're learning a lot. And so like a big focus of the dev blog is talking about here's how we failed this month, and like here's how why that's great. Like I failed a lot. Woohoo. It's been a great month. And so like you can check out through the dev blog all the different iterations that even just our website has gone through to like change that perspective. And originally like the builder, our toy designer, was like a blank canvas, right? And you'd go in there and you'd be like, it's like that scene from The Matrix where he's just in the white room and you're like, what can I do in here? And then we're like, Morpheus holding the pills, we're like,
anything.
You can do whatever you want. And then slowly we're building out more and more structure and infrastructure so you don't feel lost in there, and you're given more of a path. And like even to this day where we look at the sculptor and we're always collecting feedback, it's like, okay, people need more and more and more structure. And eventually I think the way that Freely's heading is you're going to start with pre-designed toys that we're like, we know you'll love these. And then if you want to tweak it, that option is there, but really leaning heavily on these toys that are, made.
Yeah. I'm going to try to bring up your website here in a minute. But if I do, I think your cameras might go wonky. I'm not sure what might happen. But we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But you guys and I had a conversation, it may have been a year ago or so. And I think I might have been a little bit harsh. I think George and I might have been a little bit harsh at the time. Because we had a few comments, and that was kind of one of the things was that, we walked in and we were like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And because we looked at it, we were like, okay, this is kind of interesting, but what am I doing? What am I supposed to do? And now I'm looking at, I'm like, you guys have totally refined this. It makes a lot more sense. And it's 100 times better than it was. And so you guys are doing great. George has it in the chat. Failure is just a data point. That was a conversation from one of my guests last year also. And, there's a story from Shop Dad that, he's like, when he got started in one of his engineering jobs, his first job, his mentor told him, 90% of what you do is going to fail. And his response was, you mean 10% of my stupid ideas are going to work? And he was happy. He was thrilled. Yeah. So
well, I hope our stupid idea is going to work.
Yeah. Okay. So we want to talk a little bit about the software and the way that people kind of come at this is, I think they hit your website and then they're going to have the opportunity to what?
So there's actually two paths on the website right now, so there's the opportunity to buy toys, which are toys that have been tested, that are tried and true designs that we know are great designs, which we call our flagships. So if you go on our website and you click on shop or on products, you'll see these designs, which are sort of like semi-customs. So we use the same molds for all of these toys, and you can choose your silicone hardness and your color that you want, whether it's matte, shimmering, or marbled. But there's also the opportunity of clicking build yours, and then you get thrown into this making environment where you start from a template, and then you can change the color and the hardness, but also things like the shape, the size, the curvature of your toy. It's really like if you think of like the Sims character creator or any character creator in like a video game, and you're like sliding little sliders to increase the like size of someone's forehead or nose or something like that. It's the same thing, but for dildos.
Gotcha. Okay, I think I might be able to do this. We'll try this. We'll see what happens. Okay.
Nice.
Gotcha.
Oh
okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
All right. So let's go back a screen. So this is where people are going to start. And let me just make me, actually, I'll just scooch myself over here a little bit. So people are going to come in here. And let's just start with build yours. And so we've got this little guy here. And so we click on shape and size, and we've got this, and we can just grab these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in the background here, essentially what we're constantly running is some equations that are going on the shape that you're creating on your screen to make sure that it's going to be possible for us to mold. So a big thing that we came out of when we first started testing and designing this is like, okay, can we actually make the toys that come out of here? And obviously it's not 100%, but you'll notice that if you make anything too wild, the line that you're dragging will go red. And that indicates, oh, you're exceeding a bit what's happening there. Yeah, exactly. So like, for example, it's like, yeah, you can't make a you can't make a dumbbell, maybe.
Right. But I'm also noticing you've got things happening down here. So if you take the head out wide, you also come out at the base.
Yeah, so one of the driving, well, obviously, like any good, hopefully we're good. I like to think we're good. Like any good, toy shop or toy creator, we want first and foremost to make safe toys. And
yeah.
As we all know, that can't be done if you don't have a flared base. And so a big way that we do that is by ensuring that there's a certain margin above the largest point on the toy that the base is, right? I believe right now it's 2 centimeter radius larger than the largest point of the toy, which is about just under an inch, like maybe 3/4 of an inch. So you end up with 1.5 inches extra diameter at the base than the largest point of the toy. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And obviously you can change it, the base. You could go like in the base module there in the next step and make your base much larger, less large, more tapered. You can do whatever you want.
And right here, we've got an overhang, and it's going red, and it actually won't let me do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's to prevent. So right when we're molding it, so this toy would be flipped upside down. So imagine when we're pouring it, you get that big ring of air bubbles all the way around. So the part of the calculation that it's running in the background is making sure that it's actually moldable, both from a demolding standpoint and from a pouring standpoint. It also has some small stuff, making sure that there's like enough of a draft angle on the mold to make sure that we won't absolutely destroy our mold, or the toy. But you can make like Darth Vader. You can get in there. On the first tab on the bottom, it says select template. You can even click on that and see like all of the toys that we offer. Anything with an S at the top left, those are our flagships that Luke was talking about earlier, where like you can buy those if you just like the design straight up. You can buy it at a much more affordable price, just by clicking on C product.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
But obviously you lose whatever you've worked on.
Yeah, I want to customize this one because now this is something that impressed me. Because that's not easy to do, software-wise.
Yeah. Let's say we have one guy in our team, our resident software engineer, spent a lot of time on that. For sure, a lot of frustration, too.
This was another one of those decisions that was motivated by our community. Like, one of our favorite things to do is read emails from folks who are like, I like your toys. I've liked what I've got from you so far, but this little thing would make it, that much better. And when we had a certain critical mass of people saying that, for example, saying, I really want curved toys. It was a lot of prostate owners who are saying, I'm having trouble hitting the prostate with this toy that isn't curved. We're like, okay, well, if you say so, like, we'll add it. Let's get started on that.
Yeah, what you need here, I'm going to tell you how to fix this.
Please do.
No, you need to have multiple angle points. You need to have a point where you can, so that you can have a straight point and then an angle. Anyway,
no, that's definitely in the pipeline.
I'm sure that's in. I'm sure that's in an iteration that's coming. Okay, but we're gonna leave the page. Now there were 2 paths. There's the shop now.
So these are all of our toys that we developed in collaboration with our community and with trusted testers and partners, and essentially toys that people have signed off on as being like really good and that they enjoy for a variety of different reasons.
Okay. And, these are standard colors, but, oh, you've got more. And can they be customized, or are they just these combinations?
For now, they're just these combinations. Essentially, we don't want to do anything. You know how if you're on the Domino's pizza tracker, is that a thing in the States?
Oops. Yeah, it is. Hang on a second here.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
know
the
how
Domino's
sometimes
pizza
you're on the
tracker.
Domino's, yeah, and you're building your own pizza in the little pizza builder, and you add mushrooms, and then a little sign pops up that says like, you can't see it on the pizza, but the mushrooms are there. There's nothing
Yeah.
more unsatisfying than that. It's like, no, show me my little 2D mushrooms on my pizza. And so
Yeah.
like a big thing of our philosophy is like, yeah, we could let people just like check off boxes and be like, I want whatever, the gray mica and the matte yellow. And then on the back end, it would be fine for us, but it wouldn't be reflected on the 3D model. And so we didn't
Yeah.
want to let people do that quite yet.
Okay.
Because we want it to look good, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was also a big part of what we learned in our first year through talking to so many people and all the surveys had done, is a lot of times when people are buying toys online, they get frustrated because they don't really know exactly what they're going to get, what they're buying.
Yep.
And we realize the indie community is doing a great job where you'll see like descriptions that are super long. They've got all of the stats of every single dimension there, whereas like more mainstream stores will just be like, this is a 6-inch dildo, and you don't even know if that's the insertable length or the total. Or
Yeah. Excuse me. Let's see. Oh, there's a question. I want to come to this one. What about, this is from Art in Progress. Do y'all plan on getting into the pin game with this business? Penetrables.
That's a good question. So absolutely, that's something that's on the roadmap. In fact, we have a couple of prototypes that we've been working on. But interestingly, that's actually prototypes that we've been making for sort of the, call it invisible business to business side of Freely. So what we're looking at here is our direct to consumer, the toys that we make and sell through our website direct to people, so that, by not selling them through a third party vendor, we can cut down on costs, all that business model stuff. But a new thing that we've been working on is we want to work with influencers and other people who have existing communities and followings to really work on that second half of our mission, which is to destigmatize and make people more comfortable with sex toys. And so our philosophy there is, if we're able to work with people both in the sex toy space and just in the wellness space, and eventually branch off into totally unrelated influencers, if we're able to work with influencers like them, then we'll be able to bring these, high quality premium, made out of really good quality toys like everybody in the indie community does, to more people. And part of that is one of the influencers we're working with asked for a penetrable, and we're like, we've never made one before, but definitely, if that's what you want, we'll get on it. And part of the benefit of having like a pretty agile team of engineers is this influencer asked for it, and 2 days later they had their first prototype.
Oh, awesome.
And so we're, it was awful.
Oops.
Don't get me wrong. It was by no means a good penetrable, and we're still making it better. But we're moving towards that for sure.
Okay, good. Now, okay, so we hit on the software and the customizables. Now the question I've got, and this is, we might be getting a little bit technical here, is how in the hell do you do this? I mean, I know what it takes to take a 3D model and make a mold of it and make a product. How the hell are you doing this? If somebody orders one, it's a one-off. How can you even do it in a way that's even remotely profitable?
That's the secret sauce, yeah.
I mean, we did talk a lot about the how hard can it be mentality. We definitely had that mentality. And our first year in business, we weren't really in business. We were just doing R&D. I mean, we didn't even sell a single thing for a full year, but trust me, we were working hard to try to find a way that to make toys, new toys, super quickly, affordably, and obviously, most importantly, that were safe. Um,
There are
turns
some
out, like,
relatively incriminating photos of us sneaking into different labs at school to like use the room and like test things out real quick.
Yeah.
But sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Luke.
no worries. I mean, you couldn't have said anything better. Yeah, so we did spend a lot of time at university developing our manufacturing process. Um, there's a bit of a secret sauce when it comes to making our molds that we don't like to talk about more, but all of the materials and the coloring and all of that is the exact same way that any other store in the indie community would do it. I mean, we use the same really reputable materials as everyone, the same really reputable pigments and mica powder as anyone in the community. But still, when we were making this new process to make molds, we were still really, really scared. And we know there are regulations, but we were like, damn, we have to get this thing tested. So we actually go through the process of getting our toys tested by a third-party lab, which I think was one of the reasons why it took us so long to first launch freely, because we had to wait for all of this huge and long process to happen. Yeah.
Okay. So we know the materials are safe. All right. I'm not going to push too hard.
I mean, push, and then like if we butt up against something that we can't talk about, or I mean, like the process itself. One of the reasons we have to be so secretive about is it's patent pending, and so we can't talk about it openly, or else like our patent becomes invalid. So we're working on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get you guys into any trouble there, but I know that. I mean, if you guys have pulled that off, that's something. I mean, I hats off. I'm impressed. So yeah, I would be. That's something to really be proud of. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a box. We call it the museum of failed prototypes. One of the first ever toys we made was so awful we called it the shrapnel plug, because it was like it had bits of like crap in it, and we're like, okay, this has never seen the light of day. Don't worry, no longer any shrapnel in Freely toys. That's a guarantee. Like that kink is out of our problem. Luke's sitting there like, oh God, Ben's saying some stuff that he shouldn't.
Yeah, Ben's ruining all of our marketing and the hard work we've done. All of our existing customers that were super happy right now are going, whoa, what's going on?
But that's just it. You know, there are so many things that we screw up, and that's part of it, is that we want to fail. You mentioned this earlier. We want to fail so badly that we know what we have to do to, you know, what was it we did to screw up so badly to create that, so that we don't do it again. And it's, you have to screw it up so that you can figure out how not to do it. But I mean, I screw this up all the time. So I mean,
honestly, like we've been trying to integrate, and obviously the indie community has been so integral to our, you know, relative success and to us being able to do and be where we are today. And like time and time again, we've been blown away by the generosity and like straight up engineering and problem solving that goes into what folks in this community do every single day just to make some sick toys. Like, you know, when we got in here, we were worried that we would be, you know, outliers in this way, but it's really heartwarming and fantastic to see that this is the spirit that permeates everybody who makes, you know, indie toys.
Yeah. I mean, we might have degrees, but sometimes we see some toys that get pushed around on Twitter or on Discord, and we're like, how the hell are they making this? It's like...
Yeah. I've called up one of my like manufacturing process profs before and showed them like a stroker. I was like, how did they get no molding lines? Why is there no parting line? Like, explain this to me.
Yeah, it takes a special kind of mind to be able to, reverse engineer things, and be able to see kind of the result and figure out, what had to happen. It's like running the timeline backwards. I saw Nerd On is in the chat. There was a question about adding texture to the online UI. Any thoughts about that? Scales.
So many.
Much discussion about this. I mean, you could bring up any kind of feature that could be on a sex toy, and there's been thought about it. It's in an Excel document rated for the difficulty of doing the software, the physical production. Turns out that like the software part is often very tough to do, especially for things like this, right? The more features that we add, all of those checks that we do to make sure the toy is safe and the toy is manufacturable become much harder. I think it's something we can do in the future. I think it's definitely in the pipeline. It is tough though.
We can get into like the whole technical aspect of what's limiting us right now. I don't know if that's interesting to the audience or if that's just going to be like hibbledy gibbledy nothing speak,
Actually, I've got a question for you. And then we're going to come back to those limits. We may come back to this in a minute. These are all one-offs, right? So these are all customs.
Mm-hmm.
What about waste?
That's a good question. So essentially, you're right. These molds are one-offs. We have ways of essentially recycling, reusing the molds, but we'd rather not. It's an energy-intensive process and time-consuming. Essentially, one thing that's what we've looked into sort of pivoting towards in the future, which would really drive down the waste and drive up our ability to reuse these molds, which is great, is sort of like a marketplace feature where if you design and buy a toy, or maybe if you just design one, you'd be able to post it on the marketplace. And if you buy one, right, we'll have to make the mold and make the toy. Then we'd already have this mold and it would be able to go on the marketplace for like the same prices that you see on our semi-custom offerings, as opposed to obviously the higher prices that we have to charge for a fully custom. And then essentially have like, rising stars and like the design of the week and have all of these existing molds that like more people can reuse. Because we've seen it in some weeks where several people will order a fully custom and be like, man, these are so similar. Like if this person, because you'll get an order on a Monday and then the Wednesday order will come in and they're like the same. And then maybe one the next Sunday would come in. And you're like, if these people could just look at the Monday order and be like, close enough, I'm going to save myself $75 on whatever the custom order fee is,
right,
and just get one that's maybe a little smaller, then that would be fantastic. So that's something that we're looking into implementing in the future. But first, we really want to get the software to a point and add things like texture and, the 2-point bendy thing and all these other features so that people can really make the toys that they want before we ubiquitize them a bit more.
Because not knowing your process, knowing that it's proprietary and all that, I assume that you can get more than one pull out of each of these molds, and you can get some number out of them. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
I wonder what a one-time mold would look like. I wonder if we could make a mold out of like dissolvable like PVA glue or something.
See, right now you're scaring me, Ben. We're gonna have to go through a whole testing process again.
Increase my R&D budget for next quarter, and then we'll.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll get back to you on that one, Derek.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with our molds right now. I think they perform relatively well.
Well, I mean, there's the math there says that the more that you can get, the more pulls you can get out of the mold, the more value you get out of the mold.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
It doesn't make sense to just get one pull out of it. Okay, so let's go back to those limits. What is it that's holding you back? What is it that what are the hurdles that you're up against right now?
Well,
yeah, from a software perspective. Yeah, do you want to talk about that, Fluke? Should I?
Yeah, sure. Well, our software actually does something neat for us that like helps us actually design the molds. So what we get on our back end isn't only a like the model, right? There's also quite a bit of help that brings us to a point where we can actually make the mold. When you add all those features, let's say that like all the operations to work with those geometries just get more complex, and you're maybe not talking to the right guy right now. That's the reason why we have someone who's in software and I'm just a measly mechanical engineer. I don't know if you can explain that better, Ben.
Yeah, I guess from a coding perspective, our software in its current iteration is built off of a open source CADing software called OpenSCAD. I don't mind revealing this. I think this is fine.
Mhm.
And that in combination with like the frameworks that are built into that, as well as the sort of believe JavaScript sort of framework of our 3D renderer, those things together just pose a lot of issues when it comes to rendering textures. And we've sort of delved into the realm of using, like, for example, displacement maps to have like a preset. I think Nerdon mentioned like scale textures, for example. So we
Mhm.
had like a black and white, scale texture that we then wrapped and did all the displacement map. And we're like, okay, great, looks cool on the model, but then how do we transfer that to the back end and have that communicated through, all these other
Right.
processes that spit out our final bit? And that's where the bottleneck right now is. And essentially, to attain that point, what it's going to take for us is pretty much a ground up rebuild of the sculptor, which is not off the table by any means. I think like to really bring this to our vision and to achieve our goal of letting anybody with any idea design any toy and have it built and on their doorstep in the next 2 weeks. That's what it's going to take, and we're looking forward to the challenge.
Hmm. Interesting. Um, hmm. I'm curious. Uh, this seems like something that would be awesome for the indie shops, and I'm not talking about. I'm talking about indie retailers. Um, the indie toy shops. And what I mean by that is not like me, not like Nerd On, not like Fantasy Grip.
Like not
Your
makers.
local toy store, the
Mhm.
one that's on the corner of your neighborhood or whatever. Um, the ones that have really developed kind of a personality. The one that comes to mind is Babeland or some of the toy stores that really have kind of a personality to them. This seems like something that would be right up their alley.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, in fact, like when we started looking at more like business to business offerings, I mean, Ben talked about it already with influencers, and we're working with
Hmm.
some influencers right now designing their own toys because they have that personality, they have that brand that their fans are so attached with. So it makes sense to make a product that's unique to them. Well, the first thing we tried out for this business to business sort of offering is that we let a Montreal store wellness boutique actually make and design their own toys, their own toy line, right? Which for us is like, since we make one-offs every day, I mean, it's relatively easy to do that, and we get to reuse those molds. So you're absolutely right. We get more value out of it. We can reduce our prices. So it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the business part of my brain just spins when I start thinking about this. Um, and I don't know if that's interesting to folks because a lot of folks are here for the art, and
Mhm.
uh, but yeah, I'm going to ask you this question. Hopefully, it's not offensive. Um, but they say you have to have three kinds of people to run a business. You've got to have a creative person, you've got to have a business person, and the creative person you've got engineers, and you've got the business people. I mean, not saying anybody can run numbers, but you can balance a checkbook. You can probably do it. But then you've got to have a salesperson, somebody who can sell products. Do you have that? You're engineers.
I'd say yes.
You've got 5 engineers in a room.
So I don't know if you want to hop on that one, Luke, but I just cut me off.
You got it. You look like you're enthused.
Yeah, I'm preparing to go, man. I'm jumping on this one. Yeah, it's a great question. That's honestly something that we had to ask ourselves a lot while we were starting Freely. Like, we were in our entrepreneurship classes while building up the foundation of what Freely would become. And like, I remember distinctly being us 4 sat in a line behind our, at our tables in a class, and the prof was like, okay, in this class, we're going to talk about how to build a team for a business. And she's like, do not work with your friends, build a team very intentionally. And we're like, oh, what poppycock? Like, this is dumb. Like, we have a great team. We're fantastic, right? And, I'm not going to say that our team is perfect by any means, right?
Oh my God,
every time we bring in a new intern, it's a good word, eh? Anytime we bring in a new intern or somebody else to join the team, a new staff writer, something like that, we're always looking to diversify as much as possible, because those, I guess, new ideologies, those different perspectives, we believe, we're convinced that can only make a team stronger. I know I'm dancing around the point a bit, but to get down to the brass tacks, like, yeah, we although we have engineering backgrounds, the really cool thing, at least about how McGill taught engineering, is like, you are not in any means like shoehorned into one aspect of it. Like, I leaned more my entire time, even before McGill, into sort of the design and fabrication side of things. Pierre-Luc, for example, leaned more into consulting and business. We have one of our team members who did product management and another who did tech sales. So like, we cover a lot of that, I guess breadth, or that width, in terms of just our personal interests, and not necessarily what we studied, but we do as much as we can to patch those holes. And I would say that, coming into this, we definitely didn't have a forte in, for example, building a brand or managing social media or having a presence like that. Like, we had our own personal social medias, but not much else in that regard. And so, like, huge shout out to our co-founder Nina, who really stepped up into the role, and she figured out how to be a marketing person. And like, that's not her background, but she's really taken it up and figured it out. It's like any problem, and there is a solution.
Yeah. I've seen the evolution of your marketing over the last probably 6 months or 9 months, and it's really changed, and I really like it.
Thank you.
And I'm really impressed with the direction it's gone, and so you guys are getting it.
Like, our marketing, one of the big things that we were like, when we started mostly on Instagram, right? Because we're like, oh yeah, where are you? This is where people advertise stuff, right? And we talked about this yesterday or 2 days ago, Derek, but like, Instagram was our place. And like, we did a recurring series called Where's Willie, which is kind of like a twist on Where's Waldo, and where we had, at that point, we had our first iteration of the software, and so we could really quickly whip up new dildo designs, and then we would Photoshop them into different images. Like, one was in front of the Eiffel Tower, one was on some beach in Spain, and it was like, ooh, can you find all 4 of the Willies? And we had a blast, and that was just in our circles, but like, we learned pretty quickly that isn't necessarily what people in these communities are looking for. So that's
Hey Ben, we had big fans of Where's Willie. There were few of them, but they were very vocal about it. If anyone wants to go dig deep in our Instagram, like completely to the bottom, and do the Where's Willie.
I mean, if anyone wants to bring Where's Willie back, I will happily Photoshop dildos into.
I always wanted to have like 3 or 4 dildos with me, and just like put them in random places, just wherever I'm walking, and take pictures, just random public places, and post pictures like that on Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that, because just random public dildos. But
that's funny. No, I mean, like,
Doesn't always
it's
go
the
over
same
well.
idea of just seeing dildos in places where you don't normally expect them
Right.
is like, okay, you know, why? It's not weird. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a hunk of silicone, man.
All right, I'm going to remind everybody, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. George is wrangling those as we speak, and we'll come back around to those in a few minutes. Freelytoys.com. And you guys have a Twitter, right? I think I got it in the...
Twitter and Instagram at Freely Toys.
Okay. And George will be dropping those into the chat as well. Let me just check and see if I've missed anything so far. I'll make into Yosh was asking about while doing the R&D, have you just made just random shaped? I guess the question is about maxing out the software limitations. And just randomly shaped objects to see, you know, what are the max. Have you maxed out the software? How did you figure out what the maximums are? How did you figure out the limits of the software?
So, like the actual dimensions that we put in, a lot of them were found through research, like stuff like how big the base has to be, or like the minimum like width, or like
not that kind
it's
of research.
Hilarious doing this research, isn't it?
Yeah. So like we found all those stuff online. We also did tests like the minimum width of a toy, right? Like we don't want this thing like breaking if you have to pull it really hard. Well, it's not that much of a problem. I mean, silicone is so strong, so we don't really run into those problems. But before we put our website up, just before, we actually sat down and made a toy that was called, was it Ribby McTesty?
Ribby McTesty. That's the toy.
Yeah. So that was a toy where there were like the most like, I don't know, like egregious ribs on it. Like it almost looked like a spring, honestly. So we made it, and it turned out fine. I mean, it worked very well. So I think we could have gone even more egregious with our limits, but we were like, okay, this is enough. Like this is, that's okay. And you know, sometimes if we see, for example, you go on our software and you do something completely crazy, or we get an order, we'll message you and be like, hey, by the way, like this is nuts. Like, is this what you wanted? Like,
yeah. Well, a question we get a lot is somebody will go on the website and be like, how do I know what I can design is safe? And like a big thing that we're trying to change in the way that things are communicated on the builder is making it clear, like if you can make it on the website, we can make it. You know, like don't worry about it. Make what you want, and if you really want that, you know, make it happen, and we'll do what we can. And if not, we'll hit you up. Like there are very few outliers that sort of break our use cases, and they're rare enough that we're like, nope, we doubt people are going to want to, you know, pay the price to make this wacky thing just to, you know, break the software.
I mean, also there's many pairs of eyes that will look at a design before it gets made when it comes in. It's not just like a fully autonomous like industrial line going. So we will catch things that are a little crazy. That's for sure.
Because I'm over here trying to break your software again.
Yeah, we were a bit gung-ho, honestly, when we first went into designing the software. Because, like, you know, we were polishing off our engineering degrees, and we're like, oh, you know, it's material. We can just do like do the Morse circle and test it out, and like we can just find like the stress and the strain and all this, and know how big we can make toys. And it turns out for silicone, if we get a little you know, technical here, because of the properties of silicone, it doesn't share like a lot of the same tensile properties or like breaking properties of a lot of other materials. So it was a lot of trial and error to get that.
I'm trying to recreate the log.
The Fez. Very popular design.
With the top hat, I would say.
Yeah, the top hat.
Yeah.
Well, there was on Shop Dad's design challenge, there was the log, and it was basically just it was a stump, and
Yeah,
That's fun.
we can make that. That's for sure.
Actually, we're fulfilling an order right now that looks a lot like this. Believe it or not.
there you go. There's the stump.
Black magic.
There's the log. Okay, sorry. But I was kind of curious that, yeah. I mean, does that actually that calculates price too?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
A big thing there was we didn't want anyone getting to the end of the process and being blindsided by the price, because that sucks. There's nothing worse than like pouring your heart and soul into a design and be like, holy crap, like where did this come from? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So every little change that it makes to the volume is going to reflect the price. So we want to be transparent. Like your price changes at every little volume change, just because our costs change that way, right? Our production costs.
Yeah, that's what I'm playing here. I'm like, all right, because that's a lot of silicone. I'd be curious.
Mm-hmm.
4327. Okay.
Yeah, I think we'd be pretty stressed before that pour.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because I look at that
Just
like
last week.
well, here I'll put that into centimeters for you guys.
Oh yeah, much better.
That's
That's
11.97. 11 inches. Yeah, 11 centimeters length with max width, girth.
As an
And
example
volume
for you, last week we made one where the final price, which obviously is just a function of volume, right? So it can tell you the size, was 230. So what you made right there, you may think that's pushing the limits of how big, but like it's
Yeah.
Yeah. If you grab the little, so like the Photoshop scale at the top right of the shape and size thing, so like there's a little right angle thing. If you go up to the top of the rectangle that's outlining the shape right now, you'll be able to drag it either horizontally or up or right. You should also be able to zoom out on that canvas and really hit like the maximum size. If you use your scroll wheel to zoom out on the canvas, you should be able to get a bit more space there.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. It's not, for some reason, maybe just because I'm on Firefox or something like that, it's not working for me. I was trying to, I can't zoom or anything. I'm over here.
Well, that's going on the bug list.
Yeah, I'm writing that on the bug list, man.
As if you had it right next to you. Like
I have a little paper. I'm writing down all this stuff.
Firefox,
You're on Firefox?
Windows 11.
Okay. You
Firefox
know the
version 113.0.2 64-bit.
Ben's just gonna take a picture of his handwritten note, send it to the software guys, and then just be like, "Yeah, guys, figure this out."
Yeah. Okay, sorry. Over here trying to break things. Okay, so
Dapper Dong. That's funny.
what's the total turnaround time on large versus small? Since each one is unique. You said 2 weeks on anything, right?
That's our estimate. Sometimes we get them out a lot faster. Like if it's there are a lot of processes that go in there, and if any of our machines break down or if a process acts in an unexpected way, which happens more often than I'd like to admit, obviously if something like that happens, then we're scrambled a bit. But like in a perfect case, in a best case scenario where there's no, if we don't have a backlog and all the machines are up to snuff, we get an order and we can have it for like the finished toy less than 48 hours later. So, and that's a toy of any size pretty much. Actually, if it's a small toy, we can have it like 24 hours later. A larger toy is like 48 hours. So like that's our sliding scale. Obviously having a backlog and then like having a pretty small team where the folks who are doing a lot of the biz dev operations are also doing manufacturing, delays that a bit, but our 2 weeks is usually our ship by date.
Okay.
There's a funny story actually. When we started Freely, when we launched, we got our first sale, and obviously we were high-fiving all around, and then we had one of our machines break. Like everything was working perfectly. We were so ready for this. We got our first order, get to the printers, and something breaks, and obviously our manufacturer, like our printer brand is overseas, so it takes like a month to get it. So we're just like, okay, well, we're just gonna have to buy a new printer right
Yep.
now. It's faster to ship it here. Like it's
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and our
Yeah.
first ever customer got a very big thank you and sorry note.
So your family, they love what you do, right? They know all about it. They
They
support
know all
you.
about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was really stressful for me, at least. So my I'm a second generation Canadian. My half of my family is like Filipino immigrants, and so my grandmother, who immigrated to the States and then Canada, she has that very traditional Filipino. If you know anything about the Philippines, very very Catholic upbringing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you know our generation, the people we hang out with, they're pretty liberal. We aren't too stingy about topics like this, but I'm always a little concerned about bringing it up around her. And so we're
Yeah.
at, I think it was Easter dinner, which makes it worse because it's a religious whatever. And my family's like, "Oh, Ben, how I heard you've been working on a project. How's that going?" And I'm like dancing around the topic because my grandmother's right there. I'm calling them marital aids. I'm calling them wellness devices. I'm like anything but calling it a dildo. And like my two cousins, who were, I think they were 12 and 14 at the time, they go like, "Oh, sex toys." I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's what it is. And then my grandmother just turns around. I'm fully expecting her to like be shocked and like, she's never been a very disapproving woman, but I know she
Right.
grew up
Yeah.
in a very conservative environment. She's like, "I'm so proud of you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's great." So she's like, "As long as you're having fun." I'm like, "I'm having a ton of fun, Nana." That's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that all of the Freely co-founders' parents are very supportive. There are some that are more like, "Oh yeah, let me help you with the business side of this. Like we're gonna call these products and widgets and not sex toys." But everyone was very supportive, though there were
Good.
very clear messages to not quit school for this and
Yeah.
get yourself a degree and get yourself a bit of security before you jump into this, because there's a big leap between, like, I mean, we went to do mechanical engineering in Montreal, where it's like an aerospace city, so like most engineers here like will go work at, like, I don't know, like airplane manufacturers and make design airplane engines and stuff. And
Yeah.
between that and making dildos, there's some space, there's
Yeah. Yeah. Um, when you said you did a lot of research in the beginning, and I know that this is an evolving thing for you. You know, I know engineers, it's always an iterative process. There's never a stop. What was the question that got you the biggest results?
wow.
Like
Okay.
from feedback givers.
No, not necessarily.
We asked
What was the one
ourselves.
question that got you the biggest results?
I have an idea here. Maybe wrangle me here if I'm going off the rails, Luke.
Yeah.
But sort of my intuition is, we built this whole thing. We built this toy designer. We have this process that let you just make, brand new toys really quickly. And, it wasn't performing how we wanted it to. Okay.
Mhm.
And like, we had really good feedback, but it wasn't getting the traction that we'd hoped for. And we're like, okay, let's add more features to the design, and let's do that, let's do this. I think a really big question that helped us was we took a step back from it and we asked ourselves, is this useful? Like, we have this idea that we drove from that very first survey that we sent out that got 600 responses, and we built up this whole narrative at Freely. And we're like, okay, we're gonna build this thing, people are gonna be able to design their toys. And initially we're like, okay, yeah, the perfect toy, and now we pivoted a bit, and so it's like you're going to be able to design a cool toy. And the question that we asked ourselves relatively recently, honestly, was, does this align with our mission, and are we helping people? Our mission being to help everybody to, get the sex toy of their dreams and make it easier than ever to get a really good toy. And the answer that we came to is like, it's cool, but no. You know, what we had built at that point was a thing that erected more barriers to getting one of our toys than tore them down. And so from that day where we said, okay, we're actually not helping anybody find a toy that they want, we're making it harder, that initiated a ton of change in how we do things. And it kicked off, you know, our offering of the semi-custom toys. And it, since then, like our feedback and the way that people have been interacting with us, our traction in publications has gone way through the roof. It's enabled us to do stuff that, you know, has done more to further our vision and our mission than we ever could have done in our previous thought like ecosystem. For example, like we worked with the Trans Lifeline in May. We launched a toy with them that they helped us design Transpire. That month, everything, you know, 25% of everything was donated to them, and now the 25% of all sales of the Transpire toy goes with them. Like that wasn't possible when every toy was unique. But because we're building an infrastructure that's actually focused around helping people get good toys, you know, that paradigm shift has been huge for us, and it's enabled our work with influencers, which we, you know, we haven't launched any of these stores yet, but we really hope is going to help bring really high quality indie toys like what so many fantastic makers make into more of the public consciousness.
I think that sort of is parallel to what I was thinking, Ben. For me, the question was like at some point is, are we trying to innovate too much? Which I think is very close to what you're saying at that point where we were like, okay, well, we could add like, and we want to add stuff like the textured scales and all these crazy things that are really, really tough problems, tough engineering problems. But at the same time, right, we were struggling with educating the website visitors that this is a new path and a new way to buy a product. So it was already just too complex. So yeah, we had to take a step back for sure.
And you know, that's tied, I think, pretty inherently to our education as engineers. And maybe, you know, you asked earlier, do you think the fact that all 4 or 5 of you are engineers was a hindrance? And I think in this way it really was, because our entire degree, you're given a problem on a sheet of paper and you're told solve this, okay? And so we wrote down on a paper, solve this problem, and we kept writing problems for us to solve, and we were loving it. We're like, oh, look at all these problems we're solving. But like very quickly it became apparent that these weren't necessarily problems that people needed to be solved.
Right. The human element. That's a big part of, well, it's a big part of business. That's the other half of it. What about the silliest, the stupidest? What was the stupidest question? The one that made you laugh the hardest?
I mean, the first one, are we starting a dildo startup right now? I mean, we're in the middle. Who
turned to who and said, are we actually doing this?
I think the first person who brought up the idea was Ben, if I understand right. But I think we were all asking ourselves, are we actually doing this? And we asked ourselves that, I think, for a good amount of time afterwards, because we felt like there was opportunity. We felt like we could do something special, but we didn't know yet that like this was something we wanted to really dive deep into. We knew that this was like something that was close to our hearts and that we liked the mission, but it took a while to fully answer that question and be like, damn right, I want to start a dildo company. Like, that's cool. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. Like, I've never had more fun in my life. Like,
for some additional context, we had friends at the university who were also starting their own businesses at that time. Like the previous summer, I was the first intern for like a really cool company called Acrylic Robotics that a friend had started. And it's now like this crazy big thing. They use robots to make art and to essentially make it easier for artists to make an income. And so that was like my understanding of what a new business was. And then my friends and I are over here talking to Chloe, who started this crazy like robotics startup, and we're like, yeah, we're making dildos.
Now, there was a question about, with the current tool, someone could also design a butt plug, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And
all of our flagship products can be designed on the builder. So like, for example, this is Transpire, which you can buy like as a flagship product, but you can also go and customize it, right? So yeah.
Okay. And the software itself actually will make sure that it's body safe, or not body safe, but anal safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, so we
Okay.
have a flared base that you need a flared base to be there. And I mean, if we get an order where, for example, like the stem of something that's obviously a butt plug will be like too short for the sphincter, then our reaction will just be like, hey, like, by the way, if you're intending to use this as a plug, like, be careful because this is a typical sort of dimension that you have to respect where that stem has to be, or that neck. I'm not sure what exactly the word you'd use for that is, but
What about anatomy? How much study of anatomy have you had to do?
I don't think much, honestly.
Yeah,
I think most of our study was on, at the beginning, what constitutes a safe plug, and also afterwards a study of what are the different uses of sex toys and what are the different spots that you could hit. So sure, I guess that seems like anatomy. Maybe the science brain in my head is going like, that's not deep enough to be called like anatomy, but yeah, like I guess we've done quite a bit of research into that.
Yeah, like knowing where the different spots that you might want to hit are, knowing where the P spot, the A spot, G spot, like those locations, the typical distances, the sort of how to pinpoint those. But we're wary of leaning too heavily on that, because a big driving theory behind what we do is we want to make toys for every body, right? And we know that not everybody's, special spots are in those places. So we're wary of designing a toy and then being like, this will hit your P spot, because like someone's might be deeper or shallower or harder to reach, right? So it's really like we're trying to help people use their understanding of their own bodies and of their own personal anatomy to inform their purchases.
As I was reading the question and hearing the beginning of the answer, I was like, not much. And then I was like, actually, you don't need to. You kind of have to know the limits, and maybe there are some points that you may need to know. But your point and your whole goal is to let people find their own and to create the product for their particular body. So you don't need to know the anatomy, so to speak.
Yeah, and it can actually get us into not necessarily hot water, but like it's a bit of a tricky spot when an order might come through that we look at and we're like, is this like, did they mean for it to be like this, right? Where we're like, this is crazy. Yeah, like, can a person use this? And we obviously we do whatever we can not to cast dispersions or to make assumptions or and obviously we never judge, because you can't judge anything in this business or else you're dead in the water. So like, but like sometimes we'll see an order and be like, we'll reach out and be like, you intended it to look like this, right? And we send a screenshot and they're like, this was at very much at the beginning of Freely, right? We don't do this anymore, because we very quickly learned from having spoken to this person. We reached out, we're like, hey, just wanted to make sure this is right. And they're like, yeah, like I've been looking for so long for someone to make this toy and nobody has like accepted it. Like, I found you guys, I was so happy. And we sent it to them and we got like raving reviews back, and we're like, we are no longer going to make it. We're never going to question anybody again. If it comes through the door, like a big thing is like, we don't want to assume anything. It's like, okay, you ordered it. It's our job to make it now, as long as it's, safe.
Well, having the can there as a size comparison is, it's perfect. People can at least have something relative there that they can see. So get back to that. Let's see. Now, before I've only got a few more questions and I'll wrap up. I am going to open it up to you guys if you have any questions for me, and let everybody know that doing last call for questions. So if you have questions, get them in the chat. Was it? I hope this question. I hope this question. Let's see. I'm gonna skip that one. I don't like that question. Oh, arts background. Do any of you have an arts background?
As in like the fine arts? I assume so, right? Like
This is as the question was put to me.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we have formal backgrounds. I think that we are all interested in different hobbies that relate to the arts. I know that Ben draws, for example. I know that Nina was a really successful dancer. I love photography, and it's a big hobby of mine. So I guess we like getting into it, though in terms of education, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, I don't know that we have formal backgrounds in the team.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything formal. Like I know we've like I did art and drawing camp, and I did like in my entire life I've been painting and drawing. But in terms of like an actual education, no, we don't have anything like that.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily formal so much as how do the arts or how do you incorporate the how do you incorporate the creative into your business and into what you do? How does that feed into you? How does that feed you?
That's something that's been increasingly, especially as we make more and more like custom designed products for our influencer partners, something that's come to the forefront of what we're doing. Because up until now, we built the software and the artistry like leaned on our clients, right? On our customers. And it's like the persona of our ideal customer is somebody who's like very creative. They know like they've had a lot of toys and like that worked. And then as we for example, started making our own flagships, and we essentially went back to the drawing board, had to design our own stuff. That was the first step of us flexing our artistic creative muscles, right? Beyond just the engineering ones. And then now, for example, the stroker that we mentioned earlier, the brand, the influencer we're working with is very sort of anime niche. They do a lot of stuff with tentacles. And so like they asked us to design a stroker that has like Japanese and tentacle influences, right? And so that's where more and more so our artistic backgrounds have to come into play, where we just rattle off different ideas of like, okay, what about this? And like we'll all put pen to paper and start drawing it and throw ideas back and forth, ship it off to the influencer, and like iteratively get to something that's good. And then like for 3D modeling, our backgrounds are in like very engineering 3D modeling CAD softwares like SolidWorks or Inventor. And then we are teaching ourselves now softwares like Blender to make more organic, less geometrically constrained shapes. So like us picking up we're almost retroactively picking up a lot of those things that like a more standard artist would have already in their tool belt.
I'd say also at some point when we introduced these semi-custom offerings, like our flagships, a big driving force was that we wanted to start having toys that had personalities. We felt like that we had more like templates that people could use, and it could be tough for people to get inspired and to fall in love with a toy idea when there was no personality behind it. I mean, there was a name, but that's pretty much it. There was no description, and especially the pictures were lacking. So that's one big thing we started doing is when we release a new flagship product is we have very long photo shoots that are themed, and we try to actually make people feel like they're immersed in this world that we've made for this toy. So I think, at least for me, that seems to be the first time I felt like we were creative and like as an artist. But definitely just creative problem solving to make these things was definitely present for all of Freely's life.
Yosh had a question. How much do older designs from other makers help in base design, like shape temples? I'm not quite sure where that's going.
I think shape templates probably.
Oh, shape templates. Okay.
That's a great question.
Go ahead.
No, please, after you.
Okay. I think like we've definitely made a conscious effort to stray away when we make designs because we are scared to try like to make things that other makers like also make. I think that we're in a relatively nice situation where our toys are a bit more abstract, where it's less of that fantasy realm, so it's easier to sort of stray away. But definitely when we'll start, for example, adding stuff like scales, that's when we'll start to need to be really careful with our template designing. Most of the time right now, it's just looking at our current templates and saying, okay, what are we missing here? Or let's just get wacky with it. And we have tons and tons of templates, right? But
Yeah, like our first four templates, we knew that we wanted to release, for example, a like pretty standard. This is before we had curvature, right? So we were very like all of these toys would be straight. And we're like, okay, we want one butt plug, we want one like toy that would help introduce people to like what we want to call like a trainer toy that would have like a bunch of different bulbs and shape to help people get into anal. A challenging toy with a knot because we knew that knots were big, and then just one like really like signature looking like strong toy. And so we tossed ideas back and forth, and we intentionally tried to avoid looking at any existing designs just because we had like our design space. We researched, okay, for example, for an anal toy, like how big should it be? What are like the average sizes for a beginner toy to be? And we brought those into the space, designed things, whipped them up in the sculptor, and then we started making sure that nothing we made was too close to an existing design. And we actually changed one of our designs because we thought it was too similar to an existing toy that was being offered by somebody else, and we didn't want them to think that we were treading on their toes, and we really wanted to be separate. So like we went back to the drawing board for that one.
Gotcha.
I think actually in terms of artistry and how this process went about to design the toys, I think if I remember correctly, Ben, when we first sat and went, okay, we're going to launch these 4 flagships, one of the ideas for the themes, we had loads of ideas for the themes, we were like, we could just do like elements like fire, water, earth, and air.
Yeah.
If you look at our first 4 flagships, you can tell very easily which one it is. Like we didn't keep those words like fire, but it was as dumb as that, you know, like we went with these themes and played around with it.
Yeah. To this day, Ether is, I think, one of my favorite toys that we make. It's become something of a meme on the team where Ether was like the air, like anal trainer toy, and like any chance I get, I'm like, oh, can we do a special where we try to push Ether? Because I feel like it doesn't get the love it deserves.
Yeah, because I notoriously don't like it. Ben was just throwing a jab at me right there.
But it was so politely done, and it was so
yeah,
subtle.
I see the gloves come off now. You know, we're getting into the 11th hour.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it up, do you guys have any questions for me?
Yeah, maybe one actually. I mean, a lot of the people watching, and including us, are in the space and are working in the space, and you have a lot of experience. You've been here, like, in this indie toy space for a while, and you've seen different makers come and go. Like, what would you say is your advice for staying around as long as possible? I mean, we want to be doing this for the rest of our lives. Like, what's your advice?
That's a good one.
It's our turn to put you on your toes.
I know.
Got the notepad ready.
There's my first response, which is not bad, and I'm searching for a good response. My first response is diversify, which doesn't necessarily mean getting into other businesses, but diversify across categories. Which is kind of what you guys are doing as you get into the B2B business or B2B categories. But being I also like efficiency. Efficiency is something that is incredibly important to me. And efficiency to me means not just, the efficiency in materials, but efficiency in knowledge. If you know how to use a material, use that knowledge in other ways. That's actually how I got into this business. Was my experience with silicone had nothing to do with sex toys, and it was my entry into sex toys was actually using the knowledge that I had from another category with silicone. That's what got me into this area. So efficiency, not only in, conserving your materials, but also getting the most you can out of your knowledge and things like that. So those would be my 2 pieces of advice.
That's good.
How's that?
I mean, I feel like you live and breathe, especially that aspect of efficiency and knowledge in a lot of the content that you create, Derek. Like your how-to videos and like creating different places for the community to gather, I think is really, it's exuded in your brand, and I think it's felt by everybody in the community.
Good.
We've certainly used them.
Yeah.
I think my videos have X number of views, and I actually think there's only about a dozen people who've actually watched them. They just happen to have watched them like 75,000 times a piece. But yeah. So
yeah, it's us sanity checking ourselves before we start like a pour or something. We're like, wait, what was on that video again?
Right.
Yeah. Step one: anytime we want to start a new project or make something new, we search it up on your channel, Shop Down, and check the Discord.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Are you guys on the Makers Discord? Are you on my Makers Discord? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I've seen you guys. Yes, I have. I've seen you there.
I poke around.
Which if you are a maker and you want to join my Discord, send me a direct message on Twitter and I'll get you a link. The only thing we ask is that you be actively selling or have a method of selling your products. We just want people who are actually producing and actively trying to be a maker. So, unless you guys have anything else, I'm going to wrap it up and let you get on with your evening.
Great.
Well said. Thanks so much for having us, Derek. This was
absolutely.
An absolute
I had a
blast.
Yeah.
It flew by, man.
Didn't it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you guys will hang out for just a few minutes, then I will come back to you, and I'm going to do my little outro here and send everybody else on their way. So, wave good night, and I'll be back with you guys in just a minute.
Bye, guys.
Bye. All right. So, Freely Toys. We had Ben and Pierre-Luc, and wonderful guys. I was trying to set myself up there with a joke. 4 engineers walk into a room and come out dildo makers, but I don't know. I'm not good at jokes. So next week we have Chillo Fantasy is going to be joining me, and Chillo was one of the contestants or one of the participants in Shop Dad's design challenge. If you remember the elephant, that was, I believe that was Chillo's design. So we're going to be talking to them next week, 7 p.m. next Sunday. We'll see you then. Bye. Bye. That's where the camera is. Okay, I'm out. Bye.